Alright, so last video, you saw all the Dynamat go in the Saleen. I wasn't able to include the roof in that video because I only had the two 36 square foot kits, and I actually didn't have enough to cover the roof. The roof is about 9 or 10 square feet, so I ended up buying the Dynamat door kit, which has 12 square feet of material to get it done. I did also cut two thin strips of Dynamat, the length of the back part of these floor connectors, and just stuck them on the bottom just to dampen them a bit. If you're looking to do the roof like I did, you're looking at just over 4 pounds to do it. Really not bad considering how much of a difference it made. I'm also going to somewhat cover the inner doors in Dynamat, but obviously I have no doors on at the moment, so that'll be at a later time. I'll be sure to update the weight totals. Not that I really care about the weight added, but it's just cool to see how it all adds up. I'm sure some people out there would want to know. Alright, so next order of business is to pull this headliner down from the Cobra and grab the dome light and wiring off of it. For once, the Saleen's headliner is actually nicer than this one. This one's damaged. So I'll be putting the Saleen's original headliner back in. It's pretty exciting because once I get the headliner in, I can put the Rollbar back in for good. It's much easier to work that headliner back in without the main hoop up against the roof. This one's already bent up a bit from the accident, so I'm not too worried about it, but if you're trying to do this on yours, just be cautious when you're pulling this down because these are glued to the roof from the factory, and they use a pretty strong and thick adhesive. Since the back glass is shattered on this car, you can actually see the adhesive right here. Alright, so I've got the Saleen's headliner laid out here. As you saw, the Cobra's was damaged, but beyond that, the Saleen's headliner is actually darker than the Cobra's, which I prefer anyways. I've already got the wiring transferred over from the Cobra, as you can see here. The wiring was basically glued to the headliner, but on this one I just used some of this double-sided tape to initially hold it into place, and then just some duct tape over that. Simple enough. This way you don't need to make a mess, and you're not waiting for any glue to cure. I noticed the Saleen headliner does have a few subtle differences compared to the Cobra's. Like some of the beveling here, the corners are a little different. The Cobra also has these plastic absorber pieces glued on top. This one didn't come with those originally, so I'm just going to leave it as is. I used a lot more care taking this one out of the Saleen, so most of the glue and cardboard are intact. I'm not going to try and take the glue off because it's stuck on there pretty good, and I just don't want it to tear up. What I will do though is instead of using glue, I'm going to lay a few strips of Velcro down. The headliner is mostly held up by all the trim, a couple clips and screws and whatnot, but since the factory did throw some glue in the middle, I'll lay the Velcro down in that section. Not that I plan to, but with the Velcro in, the headliner can now be removed and put back in without any trouble. So I've started digging into the Cobra, and just as a side note, a couple of small observations. Check out this sound deadening. sure it wasn't designed to do that, but there it is. Looks like it still has the protective wrapping. What I wanted to get to is this rear seat brace. The seat brace on the Cobra is actually a little bit different from the seat brace on the Saleen, which I really didn't notice until I had to take it out. I guess that's partly due to the Saleen not even having this rear seat brace when I got it. It had some crap rear seat delete, and in order to put that in, you usually have to remove the brace, if I'm not mistaken. So mine didn't have the brace installed. I thought I could just scoop it from the Cobra like everything else, but the mounting points on the bottom are quite a bit different. This one also has a lower brace, which the earlier new edges definitely didn't have. The top bolts look like they mount up the same, but these lower bolts are actually in a different location compared to the Saleen. Even on the backside near the torque boxes, you can see there's a reinforcement plate for the bolt, which doesn't really exist on the Saleen. I did manage to pick up a proper seat brace from a 2000 Mustang here locally, so that's the one that ended up going in. The bottom of the frame had some marks and some scratches on it, so I just gave it a quick spray to clean it up. I'm going to leave the seat cushions out for the time being, just to keep everything accessible, but other than that, I'm going to continue putting stuff back in. I guess it would be pretty boring to see like every little thing go back in, but I definitely will try to show some of the more unique details or changes that I make to this thing. I think you know by now, I enjoy that kind of stuff. So this is how the ABS runs through the factory torque box. You've got this massive opening and this hideous bracket holding the line in place. The hole I drilled is much smaller, and I'm scrapping this whole bracket idea altogether. It'll look much cleaner and be just as effective. I'm going to get the sensor out, clean it up a bit, and then get it into the Saleen. So on the Saleen, the rear ABS lines will go through these holes that I drilled out previously. And here I have some bulkhead fittings I'm going to use to feed the line through the torque box. If I mount them like this, it'd stick out a little too much and look a little goofy. But if I flip it with this side outward, it's perfect. I also decided to remove this entire threaded cap side and just leave the back side, so it's basically a nylon grommet. The line will feed through, and this fitting will act as a grommet to protect the line from ever rubbing through the metal. So here's the result, just a simple threaded grommet. The fitting here doesn't need to be watertight on either side, so that's why I had no issue cutting off the one side. So it's out of the way of the IRS cradle bolts. Alright, so these are the rocker rails I put in a while back. I drilled out the rails where there were already holes in the pinch welds to match the mounts for the side skirts. Originally, I was just going to use the plastic push clips to mount them in, but I decided I'm going to use some well nuts and hardware to attach the side skirts rather than just the push clips that they use. So here's the hardware, just a stainless bolt and a washer, just anodized black, no crazy colors or anything, just super clean. These will mount into the well nuts in the rail. I still need to put the well nut in there. The well nuts do have a larger diameter than what I had originally drilled out in the rocker rails, so we'll have to step up the holes a bit, but no big deal. I'll mix up some epoxy that I have left and just touch up any bare metal from the drilling. No chance these ever pop off or come loose. Alright, so here I have a rear shock tower brace for the Saleen. First thing I'll say, the finish looks great, but it was supposed to come in black, and this is definitely not black. As you saw, I got the roll bar done in a hyper silver color, so now this thing isn't really going to match with anything, and at least if it was black, it would have blended in a little better with everything inside the car. But other than that, this thing will basically brace the rear shock towers by connecting them together. It'll give a lot more strength to the shock towers and reduce any twisting or damage under load. I mean, if you've watched my other videos, you already know this chassis on this car is pretty reinforced and rigid already, But I decided to add this in because I'm going to run a full coilover kit, and the more I thought about it, the more I thought it would be worthwhile to reinforce the shock towers. These cars were never really designed for coilovers, and they put a lot of stress on the strut and shock towers, so something like this will go a long way in just reinforcing them and hopefully prevent any damage. So here it is, mocked up in the car, and it looks great and all, but honestly, the fitment is pretty disappointing. It fits pretty snug between the shock towers, which is really good, but that's about it. The holes at the top are off. The gaps here are pretty big. I should also mention this kit is designed to be bolted in, so tightening the bolt may close this plate in a little bit, but looking at this in person, I'm really not digging the way this gets installed. You might be asking, why not put this in earlier or build your own? And honestly, I completely agree with both statements. Initially, I wasn't really thinking I was going to run one of these, but looking into the coilover thing more and more, and just how these suspensions are designed, it makes a lot more sense to run one. Ideally, I should have welded this in before I painted the inside. I thought I'd be okay adding it in after because these braces are designed to be bolted in and installed in like 20 minutes. But if I'm being honest with myself, looking at this now, the proper way to do it would definitely be to weld it in. But that does mean grinding off some of this beautiful paint and doing some more welding. The other thing that kind of sucks is I could have easily made one of these, but to save time, I figured screw it, just buy one. It's already done, it's already powder coated, and it'll save you the time and trouble of fabbing something up. Joke's on me though, because sometimes you think you're paying for the convenience and the whole plug and play factor, but with this one I'm going to have to plug and play with the welder. I do like the overall design and triangulation of this one. Just have to make some modifications. So it looks like I have some more cutting and welding to do, but at least the brace will now get color matched to the roll bar, so that's cool. And I will have to touch up some paint here on the shock tower and also on the wheel well side. But the good news is it's not a ton of welding, and I can easily touch up the area affected by the welds, so I'm just going to have to suck it up and get it done at some point. Just not today. At least it looks nice.